Okay, so you lived with Brady. What was your favorite or most fond memory, or the memory that sticks out the most of living with him?
I I think his smile, and his for all the silly things that you've heard about him, he had a marvelous sense of humor. We could crawl up in his lap. Um, he was just always warm, and he was. If you want to think of the nicest grandfather you could ever think of, that would be my grandfather. And no matter what, I was always thrilled to bring somebody in to meet him. He was a terrible tease. For instance, my poor husband of 55 years, when I brought him down to meet my grandfather, he said, "I don't think this is the guy you brought last time, is it?" So I adored him. And, you know, there isn't one memory that sticks out, but just his overall personality. And he was just one of those special, unique individuals. I was going to say, and he built a party house and he built a gun range for clay pigeon shooting. Um, he was, gregarious and outgoing, but not jolly laughy. That wasn't the kind of man he was, but he was the kind of person that everybody that met him wanted to meet him again. And I think that was just, wouldn't you say? Well, you didn't.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, he was just that way. He adored my grandmother. He was devastated when he lost her. And, I have fewer memories of her because she died when I was 4. So, you have memories at 4. I mostly have memories of moments with her. Like she had very long hair and she wore it up in a bun, and I remember her brushing it out and then twisting it up and putting it up. Um, but again, it was always a kind and gentle and wonderful place. And I don't care what I asked him, it was okay to do. But I had to do it safely. And I think that's neat. We talked about he built a party house. And one of the things that I always thought was so special about those 3 siblings, uh, my mother and Martha and Philip, is they used to get together on New Year's Eve when they were a little younger, because they all lived of great age, 98, 95, and 94. And they would put a fire in the log house. Do you remember this? And they'd put a fire in the log house and they would bring in the new year together, the 3 of them. As they'd lost their spouses at that point in time. So these 3 older people, since I'm one of those now too, they would get together and do that. And I always thought how wonderful that no matter what the grumpy differences were occasionally, they loved each other, and they were a really neat 3 sibs together, and that's a tribute to their dad and mom.
They were siblings. No matter how mad they would get at each other, they would forget.
Yeah, yeah. And all of us are fairly close as siblings, no matter how we live distances apart because we were the moving family. But, we're close. I don't care what happens, we can call each other. And that's gone on now for generations. And I hope our children are the same and our grandchildren as they move on.
Did you live with Brady until he passed away?
No, I was gone. I was married. He died. My son, who's now 50, he had just been born when in December when Grandpa passed away. That's
I
when.
did.
So, but Tom did. Yeah, he was there. I was the one who summered there from the time I was born, the only child, and then Marcia came along, and then Jim came along. We're all really close in age, over an 18-year span, or even more. I'm not quite sure what Karen and Sue are almost the same age. So either Karen or Sue, then you've got Martha's 2 youngest. Amy's the youngest. So Amy is 20 years younger than I am. So the grandchildren ranged for 20 years, a 20-year span. But, we all had, I think, nothing but fond memories of our grandchildren.
Yeah. I'll just kind of say ditto. There wasn't his sense of humor was probably the best, and the fact that he used the term GD as an adjective quite frequently
GDSOB.
And,
It was one word.
yeah. Anyway, if you asked him something and he looked at you and said no, you never brought the topic up again.
Right.
If he said GD no, then it meant you had to work for it. It wasn't going to be easy, but you had to work for it. You had to sell it. Okay, and that's just the way he was. And we figured that out pretty quick. Yeah, I found him. I found him when he had died. I went in to check on him. We were going to have coffee. I'd come back from a picture shoot that I was doing. I worked for Pruitt Studio, and came back from the picture shoot and had a holster that I picked up at one of the fairs, and I was going to show it to him. That's when I found out he'd passed away. So,
And he was absolutely, totally alert to the very
at the
end.
very end, yeah.
I was working in Indianapolis as a nurse, and where I worked was on the evening news. I don't even remember why. The day before he died, and he called my mother and said, you know, where Carol works is on the news tonight. So that's how alert he was and how interested in all of us. I don't know whether every grandfather at 86 years old knows where the grandchildren work.
Yeah, I was a punk born 60 years too late, and he was a punk born 60 years too soon. So, and that he thought that way. I mean, he was just very within everything that went on. I remember bringing one of my girlfriends home, and this was in late 60s, where you had mini skirts and wonderful dress attire. I love that era. Anyway, and Grandpa turned around and looked at her and smiled, because he was a big flirt. And he goes, well, Bunk, he says, when I was your age, took 20 minutes to see Hyde.
My grandfather said he lived in the greatest period of all time. He courted our grandmother in a horse and buggy, and he saw a man land on the moon. And I don't think it gets any better than that.
But he owned a 1912 Jackson, and we found postcards from telephone operators in his desk, right? And telephone operators were known as kind of loose women.
Thank you for this.
So,